A special live stream, Sekeres and Price, second intermission in Columbus, where the Vancouver Canucks lead the Blue Jackets 3-2. A couple of goals in that period, both on the power play. Vancouver retains its one goal lead heading into the third period of this game and the last period of a 7-game road trip, looking to go 6-1. And of course, Blake with a 26-0 record when leading after 2 periods. We'll circle Rinkwide's Jeff Paterson in here in a second with his thoughts and impressions before he curates his post-game podcast. But for you, what stood out in that period?
Again, this is not their Mona Lisa of the road trip by any stretch of the imagination, but they are finding their way through it. They get a power play goal, which has not been something they've leaned on during the 7-game road trip. So if they happen to lean on it a little bit tonight, and maybe third period power play goal to really sort of seal the deal here, that's okay. And what a goal by Elias Pettersson, who didn't go for the one-timer, took his time, cradled the pass, and then walked in and just went mano-a-mano on Merzlikins and said, I'm going to put the puck right here. And he did that, and he scores the goal. So 2 more points for Pettersson, 14 points now in under 5 games.
Yeah, and you say not a Mona Lisa. Boy, the Columbus Blue Jackets, after going the first 6 minutes of this hockey game without a shot on goal and being outshot 8-0 to that point, put 22 on Casey DeSmith in that middle period to just 10 for the Vancouver Canucks. They wind up leading the shots after 2 periods, 30-24 after trailing 14-8 after 1 period.
We'll call DeSmith the Mona Lisa.
Well, look, it started early in that second period. JT Miller turnover, which led to a good chance. Kirill Marchenko with a great chance late in the period as the Canucks took a couple of penalties and the Blue Jackets went to the power play. Let's circle in Rinkwide's Jeff Paterson for his thoughts and impressions on what we saw in that middle frame. Jeff?
Yeah, impressed with Casey DeSmith as I have been all season long, and kind of feels like they're going to need him again in the third period at the tail end of this road trip. Not their best period of the season, not their best period of the road trip, but yeah, I mean, there have been times this season where you've said, all right, this is a moment where you need that top power play unit to step forward, and they did. They responded to a power play goal by the Blue Jackets. So the Canucks take a lead to the third. We know the record but you know, just because the record is what it is, I mean, it tells you they play well in the third, but it doesn't guarantee you a victory. And at the end of the trip, it does sort of feel like maybe 1 foot out the door. I just thought they were remarkably passive. And maybe they thought it was going to be easy when they got that 2-1 lead and you know, sitting back, taking penalties. Obviously, like the Blue Jackets, they don't score a lot of goals, but it's the NHL and they've got guys that can score goals, certainly. And so if you're the Canucks, I think, you know, if you're talking, I think you just ask your team, give me 20 minutes, guys. You guys, you know, this is standing to be one of the best road trips in franchise history. And like, I don't say that lightly, but if they can rattle off 6 straight victories after the loss in St. Louis to come on home, first team in the National Hockey League to 30 wins, they're 20 minutes away from that. You know, just give me 20 minutes. You get Tuesday off. Maybe they get Wednesday off as well, having been away as long as they have. So we'll see what the Vancouver Canucks have left in the tank here, but they're going to have to be a little better and a little less careless. I mean, you can't just keep taking penalties the way that they did there in that period. So let's see what the third looks like. But Casey DeSmith, as he has been just about every time out, he looks dialed in and continues to give him the kind of goaltending necessary to win.
Coaches rarely give up a chance to coach and teach. So I don't think he'll go this route. But I mean, fans and media certainly have the opportunity to. Do you just give him a pass? I mean, the whole team, no matter how they win this game, as long as they win this game, like, does it just at the end of a 7-game odyssey, does it matter how they win this game, do you think?
No. And look, if they lose this game, obviously it's still been a terrific road trip.
Yes,
but it's just, you know, again, this chance to grab 30 victories by the middle of January here and just to put a bow on a road trip that has been terrific for them. So, you know, look, there are going to be bigger challenges ahead the rest of the season. They're going to play better opponents. Playoff hockey is tough. I think if you're talking, you just try to look at sort of ways to motivate your guys. If you think you're tired, just push through here for 20 more minutes, stay out of the penalty box, spend a little more time in the offensive zone, and don't make Casey DeSmith face 22 shots like he did in that period there. So, I think these are sort of periods where we start to measure the Vancouver Canucks in terms of their growth this season against the maturity of this group, and they've passed most tests. So, I'm confident that they are going to play well in the third period, and they'll find a way to grind this thing out. But it wasn't pretty in Buffalo on Saturday. It hasn't been pretty here. Maybe these are just the dog days of the season, but all wins ultimately are good wins, and 2 more points, if they can get them, will put them 2 more points closer to that playoff spot that they covet.
So let's dig into this period a little more. As mentioned, it was a poor start for JT Miller in particular, a turnover early, which leads to a chance. He then takes a high sticking penalty on Igor Chinakhov, and no complaints from JT as he went to the box.
Straight to the box.
Who knew it?
Yeah.
Burgeoning would-be power forward Dmitry Voronkov with his 8th goal of the season. Do you know he's 6'5" and 240? And take a look at his legs. They look skinny too, like he has room to put more size on that frame. Adam Boquist with the point shot. Voronkov with a terrific screen. Johnny Gaudreau gets a secondary assist for his 2nd of the day. And if you want to look to the future for Columbus, Voronkov, Chinakhov, they've looked pretty good here this afternoon. So that makes it 2-2. And then the Canucks go through a series of unfortunate events. Cole Sillinger has a chance by the side of the net with Casey DeSmith scrambling with no goal stick. Then Nikita Zadorov turns the puck over. Jack Roslovic has a chance. Ian Cole is waylaid by the Columbus bench. And then the Canucks return fire on a power play of their own with Elias Pettersson, his 23rd of his season, his 7th on the power play. He walks down from that top of the circle spot and scores with a pinpoint shot between the pad.
He's catching up to Brock Besser, by the way.
Of Elvis Merzlikins. Miller and Hughes draw the assists. Jeff, I know how you love round numbers and symmetry. The 40th assist for JT Miller, his 20th goal earlier in the game. So 60 points for JT Miller with an even 20 goals and 40 assists. And that was after Jake Bean went to the box. Andrei Kuzmenko drawing a penalty, Jeff.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because when we talked in the first intermission, and I pointed out, it had been a quiet first 20 minutes for that line with Kuzmenko and Suter and Mikheyev. So good to see Andrei Kuzmenko, some patience, just carries the puck around behind the net, forces the defenseman to put his stick on him, and ultimately right in front of the referee who makes the call there. So Kuzmenko doesn't factor in the scoring, but he does play a role, obviously, in the power play goal. So, yeah, I mean, we're back into monitoring his ice time in the third period, right? In a 1-goal game, he didn't play a lot in the third in Buffalo the other day. Didn't play a lot in the third period in Pittsburgh. The Canucks finding themselves in these tight games that are sort of going down to the wire, and this one has the feel of another one. So, among the storylines in the third period, we're watching what do they have left in the tank. If Rick Tocchet does shorten his bench, that's going to keep more of the workload on the big dogs. And, you're asking a lot of them at this point, but how many shifts will Andrei Kuzmenko get in the third period? It's a game you could play almost every time the Vancouver Canucks hit the ice here this season. Something tells me that it will not be a big number for Andrei Kuzmenko in the third period.
On YouTube, Matt saying, I hope they refocus for the third period, seal this win, and win the road trip. Chris adding, they played like I expected them to after that flight issue, a bit lethargic and unfocused, but good enough so far. That's right, Chris, so far.
Yeah, and the Canucks take a couple of penalties later in this period. It's the 2 big fellas, Nikita Zadorov, who is on the board with an assist tonight, but not exactly, I wouldn't argue, his best game of the season. Tyler Myers as well. Columbus looked awfully dangerous as that period went along with all sorts of shots and pressure, and you do wonder whether the Canucks are going to have to hang on here a little bit in the third period to keep that pristine 26-0 record when leading after 2. If I can ask both you gentlemen this question, because as we know, this is a Columbus team that is right down near the bottom of the Eastern Conference and has been one of the few true sellers in the National Hockey League as we look forward towards trade deadline. Jack Roslovic is really their only pure rental UFA to be, and he's a local kid there from Columbus. He can play the middle, although better on the wing. And then so much has been made about Andrew Peeke, Adam Boquist, some of the right side defensemen who have apparently been available for much of the season as they look to make another retool or rebuild there in Columbus. Has anybody caught your eye here in terms of a guy that could help the Vancouver Canucks might be able to be acquired between now?
Nobody's terribly seasoned. I've floated the Andrew Peak name to others too, and they've just said no, not much there. But Jeff, what do you think?
Well, the names that you listed, nobody's really jumped out at me. I came into this game curious to see Adam Fantilli, not that he's trade bait, but just the first look at him against the Vancouver Canucks. And, he ends up drawing the penalty against Tyler Myers there. But really, that was sort of the first time that I noticed him. The guy that's jumped out at me an awful lot in this game is Cole Sillinger, who, they're asking a ton of a young guy to take on big matchups. He's seen Lotto line in this game. Guys, he's going to have 150 games of NHL experience here at the age of 20. Like, he doesn't turn 21 for a few more months. So, they've thrown him into the deep end, certainly, but he's just been involved in this hockey game. I've noticed him a bunch. He won that battle with Bluger on their first goal along the sideboards and, power play time, penalty kill, again, for a guy that's the age of 20. So you hope that they can continue to surround their young players and get some traction, because ultimately that's what seems to eat away at so many young players in Columbus is the losing there, and they eventually want out. So at one of these points in time, you think that maybe the Jackets will figure it out, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be this season. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what they do ahead of the trade deadline. Obviously, they're trying to figure out the Elvis Merzlikins situation there. They've got a bunch of guys that play goal for them. I'm not sure that any of them play it particularly well, at least this season, but I think they're trying to get him on a run here and boost his value and see if maybe there's a chip there to play ahead of this year's trade deadline.
Being an intermission show, we should keep people up to date on the out-of-town scoreboard, because a couple of Western teams in action, one of consequence, the Seattle Kraken, who have been so on fire of late, looking to get their 10th win in a row today. Down 2-0 to the Penguins after 2 periods of play. They had a chance. The Kraken did for at least a moment, because the Kings do play later. If the Kraken had won, guys, they would have been in third. It's been a long time since anybody but Vegas Canucks.
Yeah, they could still win, but
they could still win.
Yeah, still available.
Still available to them, but there was a chance to actually shake up the top 3 of the Pacific Division today, and it doesn't look like that's probably going to happen.
Jeff mentions Cole Sillinger, and remember, he had that fantastic 16-goal campaign as a rookie coming straight out of the USHL, guys. He had played Major Junior earlier in his career with Medicine Hat, but to come out of the USHL and have a 16-goal season, huge backward step last year with just 11 points in 64 games and up to 17-38. And he's one of the guys that people have sort of furrowed brow going, what is Columbus doing? How are your young players going to get better if they don't get more ice time? It has been a narrative around Port Moody's Kent Johnson and to a lesser degree around Cole Sillinger. Sorry, Jeff, you wanted in on the Kraken, did you?
No, more on the Kings that just in a complete free fall here, and 2 wins in their last 10 hockey games. And you're right, it was the big 3 up until Christmas, but they have invited themselves to the wrong party. It feels like to this wild card dance now, and if they're not careful, they are going to find themselves below the bar entirely. And it's hard to sort of imagine. I mean, the Canucks have been a steady climb since day one. The Kings were locked down defensively, airtight, weren't giving up anything. And obviously there were questions about goaltending, and Cam Talbot is still healthy, but Phoenix Copley's done for the year. David Rittich doesn't feel like the answer as a backup, even as a guy that's, able to spell off Cam Talbot. So I wonder if the Kings, they were in the goaltending market last year. I wonder if they have to go down that road again here at some point to find somebody that can just insulate them at that most important position. But it's been a wild sort of 6 weeks. I think I looked the other day on December the 8th, the Canucks and the Kings were tied in points, and LA had 4 games in hand. And here we are mid-January, and the Canucks are 13 points clear of the Los Angeles Kings. Those games in hand, suddenly they don't feel nearly as important for the Kings right now.
And I'm sure the likes of the Oilers and Kraken would have thought that this 7-game road trip was a chance to climb back or claw back some ground on the Canucks, and here they are on the verge of a 6-1 road trip.
Well, and Mitch wants to point out, and following along, thanks for that, Mitch. Perhaps he's a Kraken fan. They've run into some injuries here. Matty Beniers, Vince Dunn, Andre Burakovsky, all missing from today's game. Yeah, that's arguably your best forward, your best defenseman there. Guys, you bring up the Kings and goaltending. There was that eyeball emoji from Kevin Weeks around Jacob Markstrom late last week. Does anybody see a fit there? Could our old friend Jacob Markstrom be still in the Pacific Division after a trade. He's got a full no-move clause, so he controls things here. But I think push is coming to shove with Calgary, and it sounds very much like the GM kind of wants to rebuild, particularly knowing some of these free agents don't want to re-sign. It sounds like we're just awaiting sort of an ownership approval there, and we could be looking at a teardown of the Calgary Flames.
They've done a lot of dealing in the division, though.
Including trades of our old friend Chris Tanev and our old friend Jacob Markstrom. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't know about Los Angeles. I mean, Markstrom's got a big ticket. We know that, and there's still term left on it. And as you said, the no movement clause. The guy that signed him in Calgary now works in Toronto. The Leafs certainly need some goaltending, but again, I don't know that they can squeeze that contract. It would take some real gymnastics to make something like that happen. You know, a team like New
both
Jersey,
of them, Jeff, LA as well.
Yeah, New Jersey's kind of been, you know, they're right there. They're obviously they've run into some injury problems as well, but they're kind of in that mix in the East, and you know they were a pick of a lot of people at the start of the season to pick up where they left off last year. You know, could goaltending aid them in that regard? So. Yeah, I think the Flames are getting close to that go, no-go point, although they've started to win some hockey games here, including one in Vegas over the weekend on Hockey Night in Canada. So maybe that just kind of muddies the water for them a little bit. But, you know, we're at that point in time, mid-January, where some serious decisions are going to have to be made by some of those sellers, you know, when they want to put the open for business sign up around the National Hockey League.
All right, Jeff, why don't you let us know what you got coming up on Rink-Wide? Because as mentioned off the top, and we're here because it's such an odd day for the Vancouver Canucks with a weekday morning start.
Yeah, we'll be recording Rink-Wide right after the final buzzer and break it all down. Irfan Ghaffar will be with me on this episode. So we're looking forward to getting Irf's thoughts on the game. Certainly we'll recap the road trip itself, news from off the ice. Elias Pettersson, first star in the National Hockey League this week. And, you know, that's not a surprise to anybody that's watched him in the lotto line run amok in the East. So, yeah, I mean, let's see what this third period brings. And as we do post-game reaction out of the locker room, we'll have our 3 stars and the stat that stands out and everything else that we pack in to Rink-Wide after each and every Vancouver Canucks game.
Marvelous stuff, Jeff. And you'll join us on Sekeres and Price on Tuesday. And just for Sekeres and Price listeners, our podcast will be a little later out today as we digest this third period from Columbus and record after the fact. Thanks, Jeff.
You bet, guys.